Peter.
I think when we discuss the issue of multiculturalism, we need to be very careful about stereotyping or generalizing. There isn't one multiculturalism, there are many different interpretations about how multiculturalism is and how it should be. And that's really what I want to address here. I would say that for many people in Britain, multiculturalism is a progressive anecdote to the enforced monoculturalism that used to exist, where those outside the mainstream were marginalized because of their race, their sexuality, and a dozen other different attributes which were not regarded as mainstream and acceptable. So in many ways, the push for multiculturalism in Britain has actually been a good progressive thing in that it has given a place at the table, for example, the Black and Asian communities of this country, which for so many generations were excluded and marginalized. Their experience, their culture, their traditions, their opinions, their political power has been strengthened in tandem with the growth of the multicultural ethos. So that aspect of it, to me, has been very good and positive. It's been a progressive evolution of our society away from a monoculturalism which was based on forced conformism. I think allied to this is the issue of the right to be different. To me, the right to be different is a very important fundamental human right. The expectation that we all have to be the same, that we all have to conform to the same values, the same rules, the same ideas, the same lifestyles, the same morality, is a very, very dangerous idea. It's part and parcel of every authoritarian regime, whether it be of the left or the right. So to me, the right to be different is an important human right that has to be defended. And I say that as a gay man who, for most of my life, have not had the right to be different. For most of my life, I was criminalized in various ways because I didn't fit in with the majority heterosexist model of how a man should behave. So I'm really glad that we have asserted the right to be different in terms of who we love and who we have sex with, because for lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people, that right has meant an expansion of our freedom, our choices, our opportunities. So in that sense, the right to be different and multiculturalism has made a real, tangible, positive difference to my life and to the lives of many other LGBT people. I look also at the experience of Black and Asian communities in this country. I would say that our society is vastly enriched by the contribution that Black and Asian people have made to our society. From the everyday things like the range of different foods that we never had in this country, the boring English diet has been so transformed in the last 30 years in a way that, curry has now become our national dish. To me, that's a good thing. It's broken down a white supremacist, monocultural English model and given people more choices. I look at the enormous positive contribution of Black music to world music and culture. You look at the whole, from blues to soul to disco to house to rap to reggae, these musical genres coming out of the Black experience and Black cultures and identities has been a huge positive enrichment of mainstream culture here in this country and around the world. We would be a poorer society in a poorer world without the enormous contribution of Black people to our musical culture. But of course, having said all that, there are examples where multiculturalism has been interpreted perhaps in many cases too often interpreted, in ways that actually diminish other people's freedom, that assert the rights for some against the rights of others. So, for example, we see the big push to expand faith schools. Already we have a third of our schools are faith schools. Most of them are Catholic or Church of England, but now in the name of the right to be different and cultural diversity, successive governments want to promote more Jewish schools, Muslim schools, and so on. This to me is a segregated religious system based on faith, which divides young people, which will store up problems for the future, as we saw in a more extreme example in Northern Ireland. I don't want to go down that road. I want to see all our children educated in the same school system, a secular school system, where everyone mixes in together, regardless of their background, regardless of their faith or non-faith, and where we can all live and grow together. We also see the excesses of multiculturalism in the way in which there have been demands to ban various cultural events, like Jerry Springer the Opera, the Sikh play Behzti, and others. There's been the demand that we respect the minority views of certain people of faith to prevent other people, including people within those faiths, from viewing certain cultural performances. And this has been an example where the right to be different and the right to be diverse has got to the point where some people's rights are being encroached and diminished. We also see it in our equality laws. Our equality laws in this country have all kinds of caveats built into them to appease religious fundamentalists. So the laws under the sexual orientation regulations, which prohibit discrimination in employment against lesbian and gay people, include an opt-out for faith organizations. They don't have to adhere to the same standards of non-discrimination as everyone else. We've seen it in the Equality Act, just come into force, or partly come into force, this year, where again, LGBT people are denied full protection in an attempt to appease religious fundamentalists. We also see it in the way in which incitement to murder is a serious criminal offense, yet a succession of Jamaican reggae and dancehall artists have been allowed to put out tracks and perform them where they openly encourage the murder of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. And the government gives them visas and work permits to come here. The police refuse to arrest them. Now, we all know that if these were white supremacist singers advocating the murder of black people, they would be arrested and put on trial, and they'd be punished, and very severely. Just think of the example of Sheikh Abdullah Al-Faisal, the Muslim fundamentalist cleric who incited the murder of Jews, Hindus, and Americans. He was promptly arrested, put on trial, convicted, and sentenced to 9 years imprisonment for incitement to murder. In my opinion, a rather excessive sentence, but nevertheless, he had committed a serious criminal offense of encouraging the murder of other human beings. Yet when Imam Abdul Muhid in East London did a similar thing, inciting the murder of homosexuals, he wasn't even taken to court. Again, double standards. Why did Abdul Muhid not get prosecuted and convicted and jailed like Abdullah Al-Faisal? It's because there is a hierarchy of oppression. Some groups in our society are deemed to be more worthy of protection than others. Some groups are deemed to not merit the same rigorous enforcement of the law. So my conclusion is this. I very much support the multicultural ethos, which has expanded rights and freedoms, which has given a place at the table to previously marginalized and disadvantaged communities. But I do not accept multiculturalism when it seeks to undermine universal human rights, when it goes in ways that diminish the freedoms of others. The right to be different is an important human right, but not when it involves the right or the attempted right to infringe the freedom of other people. I think that we need to take a very strong stand against cultural relativism and say that every human being on this planet deserves the same rights, the same freedoms. No matter who they are or where they are, we all deserve the same human rights and fundamental freedoms. And that's a very important principle, because if we would not tolerate encroachments on our freedoms and rights, why should we tolerate it when it comes to the rights and freedoms of others, either in this society or in other countries around the world? I think we need to be bold enough to say that some cultures and some values are better than others, that the Enlightenment was better than the Dark Ages, that freedom is better than slavery, that democracy is better than fascism, that scientific understanding is better than religious superstition. Those are fundamental truths, and we must apply them across the world without fear or favor.